Katerina Duntsova was supposed to be standing in the presidential election against Mr. Putin. She wouldn't have won, but she could at least have stood. And on a technicality, on apparently 100 technicalities, she has been barred from progressing any further. The application had to be in 3 days' time, and now at the last minute she's been told there are mistakes. There's 100 mistakes. And the person in charge of the Electoral Commission has said, well, you're a young woman. This is Ella Pamfilova. You're a young woman. You've everything ahead of you. Any minus can always be turned into a plus. Any experience is still an experience. Can you think of a more patronizing put down? I can actually hear her saying it, in Russian, of course, rather than in English, but I can hear her saying it. I've heard this sort of nonsense so many times when I was dealing with education. I remember there was a fellow called Banana. I don't remember his actual name, but everybody called him Banana for some bizarre reason. And he didn't seem to go to very many people's lessons, but he came to my lessons, and there was some other lads from the Moscow State Circus who used to come, and they were all lined up outside my office one Saturday when I wasn't expected to be in, and a rather patronizing individual was busy telling them that they were all being thrown out of the university and would therefore have to do military training. They would be conscripted, and they were in tears. And I thought, well, and it was exactly this sort of thing. Well, you're young, you can deal with it. And I thought, patronizing individuals, I don't like this. I'm going to use my power as head of this department, and I insisted on them staying. My decision was probably overturned behind my back a little later, but at least for a short while I had my way, and I was able to interpose myself between Russian bureaucracy and the patronizing manner and what is correct. And I have no idea really why these lads have been chosen to be thrown out of the university. I think it was because they hadn't turned up to somebody else's class. But I think that person was teaching them English, and she could hardly string a sentence together. So I'm not that surprised that they were frustrated by that experience, and it was really a waste of time. But there were quite a lot of those lessons going on in the university. People had tenure not because they were accomplished in their subject, but because they had paid the right fee, I suspect, at the right time to the right person. And I saw a range of corruption and control that I think I've had my fair share for life of seeing that sort of stuff. And I was very lucky to have been prepared for the world of corruption by having spent a few years in Russia and in the Balkans, where I thought it was bad, but nothing could have been quite as bad and quite as profane and patronizing and dismissive as a few years in a Russian university. And I remember very, very well how people tried to pay to get through their exams, the bribes. I remember people discovering people who I didn't know taking their exams in the place of somebody else, and all this sort of rubbish, and yet on a whim, I think 7 people were singled out to be thrown out of the university and into military conscription on a whim, and I didn't think that was fair. Anyway, Uh, Katerina Duntsova has been singled out on a whim and with a patronizing nod, and she she will not be going further. 29 other people have apparently filed to become to get onto the ballot to be the next president of Russia. But so far, President Putin is the only candidate who has fulfilled all the requirements so that he can register as a candidate. Maybe it would be a choice between him and one of his doppelgangers.